You have something you want to say about Ariel Helwani before we do that?
Well, I mean, I listened to him. Do you have anything you want to say?
I have no comment.
Okay. I mean, this is not actually about Ariel Helwani, but it relates to Ariel Helwani. I mean, the one thing I guess that I want to say, he did the thing and whatever. I don't really have a lot to say about what he said past. The Vince story is a giant story. That's all there is to it. It's the biggest story. Trying to pass it off like it's... he didn't try to pass it off like it wasn't a big story, but he didn't think it had anything to do with Triple H and past. I mean, he did talk about changes and things like that, but I mean, he didn't ask about... And maybe now he wishes he would. I don't know. But I mean, the reality is that, like, Paul Levesque worked with Vince for all these years. It wasn't just Vince. It was John Laurinaitis was involved with this stuff. There's the culture. There's a culture there. I don't know what he can talk about. But it did, there is a cultural thing in the company. How is it going to change? I mean, whatever. He went for the jugular on Tony and should have done the same on Paul, but whatever. It's a minor thing, and it's not a minor thing. Let me take that back. It's not a minor thing, but I think that the overriding thing, with him being, as far as the statements on AEW fans and the statements on, which company was better or whatever, should not have said those. So the two things that he said on the show that I do want to bring up is, number one, he said that he's actually not, because the two things where people were saying, like, conflict of interest. Well, actually, there's other things they were saying, but was that he works for BT Sports, but he's actually not working for BT Sports. He was, but I guess his contract with BT ran out, and he is no longer working with them. And he was covering WWE for BT Sports. And then the other one is he said that he did not get paid for doing the voiceover before the Seth Rollins and Matt Riddle match at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view, that he did because he just wanted to do it. And obviously the optics are bad, in the sense of whether he got paid or not paid, he was on their pay-per-view, and then a couple days later trashes Tony after the interview. And the interview was what the interview was. It was like, I had no problem basically with the interview. He asked the questions he should have asked. Tony gave the non-answers. And there were a lot of them. And, I expected it. I wasn't really alarmed by it. I share his frustrations over it. Ever since May, it's been, one thing after another like that. I mean, that's just how it's been. And even worse in September. But the one thing, and it is at this point, okay, we're in mid-October. The thing with the brawl, whatever, after the pipe bomb, whatever, scrum, that's September 4th. We're in mid-October now, so we're 6 weeks out, and the company has still not said anything. They stripped guys of titles with no explanation. They never mentioned their names on television. They were four of the biggest stars in the company. Punk, maybe the biggest star in the company, and Kenny Omega right up there. One of the top, the big four stars were Kenny Omega. I guess maybe big five if we include Bryan Danielson. But it would be, Moxley, Jericho, CM Punk, Danielson, and Omega were clearly the big five stars of the company. And two of them are gone. The Young Bucks, are the flagship tag team of the company, who have been in every pay-per-view and performed in some of the greatest matches in company history. And they have also disappeared. And there has been, people go, well, they have not said anything. He did not. He didn't go out there when asked. It was just like, I can't talk about this. It wasn't, it wasn't like they're under suspension. It wasn't like we're not going to talk about it because we have an investigation. He said nothing. And at this point, it's been, granted, this was a week ago when he did the interview. But it's been over a month when he's done the interview. And there's not even an explanation to anyone as to what's going on. Anything that anyone has heard about this has come from me or you or Sean Sapp or another reporter, pretty much those people, nothing from the company. And it is like, it's so bad. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, you know, to not even say anything. I mean, I cannot think of any other form of entertainment or sport or even a pro wrestling company other than the sleaziest companies there are. And I'm not calling AEW a sleazy company, but I am saying that in the past, you know, you'd have sleazy companies run away from stories. But if this was any independent promotion, if this was, you know, where top stars were going to be missing time, they would tell you. If this was WWE, probably they would. I know with Sasha Banks and Naomi, of course, that was to get the jump on the story because they knew the story was going to come out. And they went and made an announcement, you know, on the very show they walked out on, okay, right on TV. And then again, you know, buried them and everything like that. And people got mad at them for doing it, but they did acknowledge it right away, okay? If it was New Japan Pro Wrestling, Jesus Christ, New Japan Pro Wrestling, somebody has a cold and they tell you what the new lineup is that very day. Someone's got hand, mouth, and foot disease, right? And they tell you he's got hand, mouth, and foot disease. It's not like they just disappear and you don't hear anything. And I mean, I know that this is how AEW does business, but it is, I've just never seen, you know, especially like, you know, I worked in the front office of a soccer team. And I mean, we'd have never in a million years, if our star player was not there, and I was there when our star player was not there. And I know what we did. And we told the people, the star player's not going to be there. And he's, you know, he probably won't be there next week. And we don't know when he's going to come back. But we told people exactly what was going to happen, or as much as we knew, perhaps not everything. Perhaps you hold some stuff back, but you don't, you know, you give the fans something. You know, it's like now, I mean, people are sitting here every week. You got people who think it's a work. You got people who think, and that's their problem, okay? But they're not told anything different because the company never said anything. But you have people going like, oh, Adam Page made a reference. These guys are coming back this week. It's a hint. And it's like, and maybe, who knows? Nobody knows when they're coming back, including the people who are on suspension. They don't, you know, nobody knows anything of what's going on. I mean, it's, at some point, it's just ridiculous. And, you know, again, like right there, he had the chance, he was asked, and he could have said, you know, I mean, something like, we don't know when we're going to bring them back. But it's like nothing. It's like, you know, again, like people are going to me like, oh, you know, I mean, everyone knows they're suspended. Well, you do because I told you, or another reporter told you. You didn't hear it from them. They haven't said a word, you know. And the same thing happened with the Warriors. It's like, were the Warriors completely honest from day one? They were not, but they in fact told you on day one the story. And then when the video came out, they acknowledged it again. They talked about the punishment. They talked about everything. They didn't pretend it never happened. They didn't do a thing where we can't mention anybody's name. You know, I mean, no sport would do that. No entertainment would do that. No live play would do that. No concert would do that. I mean, you know, the justification, this is the con man world of pro wrestling, and it's the carny world, so they should be able to do it, or, you know, card subject to change. I mean, that's ridiculous, treating your fans like that. And I mean, that's one of the things that AEW had at the beginning, was the idea that they were not garbage pro wrestling and that they treated their fans with respect. And boy, you know, like in this case, I mean, if there's a legal thing, just say, we have a legal situation, we can't discuss it, and until it's resolved, these guys aren't going to be back. That's fine, because that's, as far as I know, that's what it is. But you should at least give the fan base something, because they're sitting there. And, you know, now, you know, do you really want them? Well, maybe, I don't know what you want them to do, but, you know, I mean, there were people who were, they're going to bring them back in Toronto because that's a big show. And it's like, I mean, I don't know when they're going to bring them back. I don't know even know if they know when they're going to bring them back, but they didn't bring them back in Toronto. And they didn't bring them back in New York, where they had a giant show. And are they going to bring them back in Newark? Who the hell knows? But at least say something. And he goes, because I know people who are just like on the the thing. It's like, oh, Tony said it was. I mean, they didn't even listen because they said, oh, Tony's, basically said, like it's investigation until it's going. He never said a word. He did not say that. He just said, like, I cannot talk about this. And they asked him about Cody, and I cannot talk about Cody. And I understand that one, too, because Cody and him both made a promise that they would not talk about it. So, and they haven't, and I know that there's a part of, whatever, I'm sure there's a part of Cody that wants to give his reason, but they made a promise, and that's fine. If you just go, we made a promise not to talk about it. Okay, at least that's something. But that is the story with Cody as far as like, why wouldn't talk about that one. But, yeah, I just feel that at this stage of the game, the public deserves some sort of an explanation. The people who've been supporting this company from day one, the fans who purchased tickets for all of these shows coming up, again, everyone who purchased tickets in August for shows in September and October, we're expecting, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Punk there. And they have not even acknowledged that Punk is injured. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, well, Punk couldn't be there anyway because he tore his triceps. Well, did AEW say that? No. Did Punk just disappeared off the face of the earth as far as they're concerned and he was the world champion at the time, and the other guys were the trios champions at the time. They just disappeared. We got new champions. No explanation's been made. I mean, at least like when Ric Flair walked out of or was fired by Jim Herd, they at least made an explanation that Ric Flair no-showed a match in wherever, and therefore we have to strip him of the championship. I mean, they didn't even do like Carney WCW from 30 years ago. They didn't even do that. So anyway, that's my thoughts on AEW right now. And, again, they built a company on the idea that they were not going to be WWE, and they were going to be, fan friendly. And, by that, they should be judged by the standards. So, well, you can't judge them by sport. They're not sport. And it's like, they're trying to be sport, and you can judge them by sport. But if you want to say, you can't judge them by sport. Okay, let's judge them by pro wrestling. What would a pro wrestling promotion do in this situation? What would New Japan do? We already know what New Japan would do. They would tell you the day of what happened, why. They might not tell you everything. They might hold some stuff back, but they certainly will tell you they're not on the show. And this is how long they're not going to be on a show. With Kota Ibushi, it's like, we don't know when he's going to be back. We all understand that. But they didn't, pretend it never happened or anything like that. They told you the injury when it happened. They did make a mistake in advertising him for the G1 when he wasn't there, and I think that was a communications issue because it is so against what that promotion does to do that. And it ended up all coming out and made New Japan look stupid by doing that anyway. But when it's not just New Japan, it was All Japan, Noah, whatever. Any independent group, Jesus Christ, an independent show when a name guy, I don't care if it's Warrior Wrestling or PWG or whatever, the day they find out somebody's pulled from their show, they go right on the internet and they tell you, this guy's pulled on the show, whether they'll give you the reason or not is one thing, but they will tell you. And, So anyway, I just think that AEW should live up to the standard of at least second-level pro wrestling, okay?